Welcome to Success Your Own Way, a podcast about how real people define and redefine success throughout their careers. Hosted by Tina Shurick and Ifat Rogers, this show features candid conversations with guests who've made intentional choices, navigated change, and built lives aligned to their values. Their guests share their stories as well as strategies and tactics that help them along the way. Tina's a certified coach and a former corporate leader who supports professionals in making confident, values-driven decisions. Ifad is a consultant with a background in food science and engineering, helping people solve complex problems with a practical, no-nonsense approach. Each episode offers inspiration and actionable insights for anyone rethinking what success looks like in their life and how to get there.
Welcome, everybody, to this episode of Success Your Own Way podcast. We are super excited for this episode. We have a very special guest. Jess Kaskov is a thought leader inspiring the world to profound joy and fulfillment as a #1 bestselling author, motivational speaker, and certified life coach. She left her successful 15-year engineering career at a Fortune 500 company to start her own business, Joyfulness with Jess, trading the hard hats for the headbands. Today, she does what she feels called to do, which is motivating and supporting others. She has a house full of boys in the suburbs of Chicago as the mom of 2 energetic sons, Riley and Parker, and 2 lazy cats, Simba and Clifford, as well as wife to her goofy and loving husband, Henry. Welcome, Jess.
Thanks for having me. It's good to see you again.
Good to see you. So, Jess, in your own words, tell us about your story. How did you get where you are today?
Well, as you said, we started in hard hats, right? So I did have a 15-year engineering career. So to answer that question, I'm not there anymore, as you know. I'm going to really do 2 parts to that question. The career transition part, but there's also a transition to self part, I feel like, of what's my story and how am I here today. So I'll start with the career transition. Working for General Mills was awesome. I really enjoyed my engineering career. I wasn't planning on leaving when all this kind of came about, but there was an announcement of layoffs. And they said, hey, we'll let you know in a month whether you have a job or not, which like a month's a little too long to wait. But I decided to use the time to say, okay, if I am laid off, what would I even do? And so I did some reflection, which is kind of something I do often. But I looked back at my career and said, really what impact have I had? First of all, what was my favorite role? My favorite role was not the engineering roles, the operations leadership. It was actually a human resource cross-functional role I did when our plant was closing. So I was in charge of supporting everyone through that transition of the plant closure, when we had to run an extra 1.5 years and still make numbers and keep everyone safe and make quality product with the knowledge of the plant closing and most people losing their jobs. So that was just a very heart-centered role, but it was a little eye-opening because that was a human resources role where really a lot of my time was spent in engineering and operations. So doing that reflection kind of gave me an insight into how much the people side of things was what I really valued and enjoyed the most. And then I also asked myself, like, where's my impact lie? And both of the plants that I worked at had closed at that point. And so it wasn't the process improvement I put in place, the equipment improvement I implemented that was my legacy here. It was the impact I had on everyone I managed, everyone I interacted with. That was the impact that was remaining. And it was just it seems obvious, right? But it was a reminder of that's the piece that remains, and also a piece that I was very proud of. So in the end, I did have a job. I was given a job and got to keep my job at General Mills, but I really can't unsee what you've seen, right? So once you've done reflection, you can't unsee what you've seen. So I decided that I would regret not pursuing this people support and motivation of others career path. And so I started a dimmer switch on General Mills. I call it my dimmer switch. I didn't just quit. I proposed a part-time arrangement. I was able to make that work. And they gave me a part-time position. And then I also asked for a sabbatical, months later. where I took the sabbatical time to write the book Soul Salary right here behind me. And also I used the, there you go. I also used the part-time to go to night school to become a certified life coach. And then I took on life coaching clients. So it's that dimmer switch, right? And so after my sabbatical, I actually decided to go ahead and make the leap into full-time entrepreneur. That's when I started Joyfulness with Jess and became a full-time author, coach, and speaker. And it's been very transformative to me. Very scary to take that final step, but what I did is I took as big of steps as I could that scared the crud out of me, but didn't put me into a panic attack. Like do the part-time, do the sabbatical, and so I know some people kind of jump into the just turn the switch off and let's do it, but for me, I needed that more manageable step ladder, on-ramp and then on-ramp into entrepreneurship. So that's really the career transition side.
This is great, and I haven't thought about this. Is the first great insight as far as the impact that you made, and given the fact that the plant's closed, then all of that is temporary, and the impact on people is really the important thing. I mean, having worked in the food industry for a long time, I remember the fun products that I formulated. A lot of them are no longer on shelf, but I won't forget my teams for the past 15 years and kind of how we worked on these things and what we did and how much fun or challenging it was. So ultimately, that is the impact, is the people. I love that.
Well, and your impact too with the creation of products is that all those people who got to eat it and enjoy it. Do you know what I mean? Like even if the product expired, do you know what I mean? Like there's even a bigger, broader sense to yours as well. There's a huge amount of people who got to enjoy those products. So
but for those of you in my industry, when you see your baby come off shelf, gets discontinued, it hurts a lot.
Oh yeah. Yes.
So that's so true.
Go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead. Sorry, Jess.
Well, I was going to say the second part of the, telling you about my story is really around the transition to self. And I think I'll use one of my favorite quotes to kind of lead into the story, which is, if you don't make time for your wellness, you'll be forced to make time for your illness. Unfortunately, that happened to me a few times, and they were pivotal moments and wake-up calls in a way. So, for example, when I was pregnant with my first child, I continued to keep going like I was before I was pregnant. So 10 to 12-hour days, I was on call 24/7, really just working myself too much. Again, it's a me decision, right, to work myself too much and not take into account kind of my body and my needs. And it got to the point where in the second trimester, I started having Braxton Hicks contractions, which if you don't know what those are, they're practice contractions. And my gyno almost put me on bed rest. She forced work restrictions on me and almost put me on bed rest. And it was such a slap in the face. It was such a wake-up call of how little I valued the obvious needs of my body to pursue this societal definition of success, right? Which is the job title, the pride, like you brag about how many hours you worked, like, oh man, I worked 60 this week. How about you? It was just a huge wake-up call to how much I had just dissociated from my body's needs. And so that was kind of one of the first wake-up calls. And then afterwards, when I became a mother, I'm trying to balance motherhood, and I started working, and I pushed myself too hard again and ended up having mental health issues. So unfortunately for me, and many people, it's a lesson that you had to learn multiple times. And there's different facets, right? There's the physical side, the mental, the emotional, the spiritual, and I'm sure I'm going to have to learn this lesson again, in a different way. But there's this immense pressure to work like you don't parent and parent like you don't work. And if you don't realize that there's that pressure and take it on, I think this is a very common place for parents. And if it's not already, it will be, because eventually you burn out.
Yeah, that's such a common theme that we've heard across many of our guests, Jess, especially those with children. As you mentioned, I think there's a little special pressure put on those of us who are caregivers, whether it be for children or parents or even a lot of pets. That can take a toll. And it sounds like you have gone through this transformation of defining and redefining success for yourself over your past. If you were to kind of characterize how that's changed over time, how would you describe it?
Oh, that's a great question, man. My definition of success has absolutely changed. I would say success used to be for me very much based on societal praise. Craved it, loved it. And it was the status, the job title, the salary, like I just said, bragging about how many hours you worked. And I was just able to realize over time, and even through those physical and mental health issues, how little that means, right? That's not life. That's, at the end of the day, when you're on your deathbed, you say, oh man, I worked the most hours, unless your job is the most fulfilling thing to you, right? I mean, that's a different story. But so success to me now is do I feel proud of who I am and what I'm doing and the life I lead? Do I feel proud of it? So that means, is it fulfilling to me? And am I proud of who I am? So am I a joyous, loving person? Ifat said in my bio that one of my lofty goals is that I make a profound impact on the world by spreading love and joy broadly, but starting with me. If I don't have the love and joy, if I don't have the self-love and the joy in my life, it's not something I can spread, right? And so I have that very intentionally, starting with me, and then being able to kind of make that profound impact, because when you feel joyous and you feel loved by yourself and even others, but first and foremost by yourself, that energy is elevated, and automatically you impact the people around you. And so that to me is what I have felt like success is personally. My fulfillment is in spreading love and joy broadly, starting with me, and then living a joyous life. So then taking those steps to live this joyous life.
Good. That's so insightful, and it makes me feel joy just hearing that. And also very consistent with, we talked with a lot of really savvy professionals who paid their dues and who have been through what you've been through, and who can, I think, really relate. I think our listeners are really going to relate to the journey that you've been on and see themselves reflected in that as well. And well said. Thank you for that.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah. Unfortunately, it's something that many are having to figure out one way or another. But fortunately, you guys have things like this podcast, which may inspire those who feel in a rut, or those who are in burnout, near burnout, not making time for their basic needs, much less their joy, feel empowered to do something about it.
That's right.
Tina, we asked people how you define and redefine, and kind of as I'm reflecting on it, even while as we're recording, I don't think, for example, that I was actively trying to define success until the turning point, which I believe, Jess, you and I had the exact same turning point, is announcements of layoffs. We're going to let you know in a month or two, where's your job? And that was a stop moment that really, I think, was the first time that I really asked myself, what does success look like? Until then, it was prescribed. This is what success is. I don't think I actually stopped to ask the question until that fateful reorg that looks like sent a lot of people into a thinking mode at the time.
Well, I would say it's not even just prescribed; it's the default, because it's the default mode if you don't question it.
Yes.
And so it's hard to come out of the matrix. I don't know, whatever movie reference you want, but it's hard to realize that has been conditioned into you, and you have a choice to uncondition it.
Yes. Exactly.
100%.
So Jess, you've had a great journey just over the past 5 years or so. What are you most grateful for?
I'll give two answers there, if you don't mind. It seems like a theme. I keep giving two answers.
Yeah.
Two for one. Yeah. I'm grateful that I wrote the book. So the book's called Soul Salary, SOUL. And as you said, Ifat, it did become a #1 bestseller a few weeks after launching in the work-life balance space, which I think, thank you. And I think it's fitting, because that's really what it did for me. So you write the book you need. They say that. You write the book you need. As I was writing this book on my sabbatical, I was doing the exercises. I was living the book as I did it. I'm grateful that I wrote it, because I don't think I would have made the leaps I did without writing the book, because you walk the talk, right? So I've now done the exercises. I know what my plan needs to be. Okay. So that's when I didn't come back from sabbatical. I ended up turning that dimmer switch all the way off on the engineering side, for the time, right? You can always go back. Like you change things, you try things, I'm not at that point where I'm looking to go back, but the point is I don't want people to feel scared of like, I'm making this big change and that's final. Like you trial and error, and so I'm so grateful that I wrote the book, and I'm so grateful for what it challenged me to do, AKA what my writing challenged me to do. So myself challenging myself. But by doing the book and knowing that it'd be for others, I think that it changed my life. Truly changed my life. So, yeah.
Yeah, and I like what you said about. I mean, a lot of decisions are not irreversible. There are very few decisions that are completely irreversible. And just the thought about even stopping and understanding what that is, because the immediate reaction that I have, well, I'm going to make the decision, I'm going to have to live with it. I left when I left to try to do this consulting thing while I still have enough time to go back to corporate or change my course again and again. So kind of the emphasis of a lot of the decisions are not irreversible. There are ways back or ways to a different place. So
right. And when you get to the point where you question and understand what you need to have a higher soul salary, as I call it, which means like, what are you paying yourself in joy and fulfillment, right? A lot of times, once you know what to ask, you have to do the reflection first. You got to do the work first to know like what actually feels joyous and fulfilling to you. But once you know, ask. Like you're already at a no if you haven't asked, right? Like I definitely was unsure whether I would get a part-time solution with Generals. I worked in 24/7 manufacturing. I was managing 20 external supply chain plants at the time. Very, very uncommon to be a part-time worker. But I proposed one where I kept most of my workload, but worked 80% of the time, right? And so it was a proposal that it was good for both sides, right? And so they could have easily said no, but I was already at a no, and they said yes. And same with the sabbatical. I asked, right? Yes. Like it just you just need to ask. And so a lot of my coaching clients, that's where we go down, is like, have you asked the question? I had one person, this is a really cool story, who like their July was always very slow. So instead of asking for a salary increase that year, she said, from now on, I would like July off, and like doesn't change my vacation, nothing. I want paid July off. And they said, actually, yeah, okay. What? Like, it's just not something you would normally ask. It's like, no, my kids are home. I work 1 million hours in April because I'm in the finance. So like, whatever, I'm in finance and that's whatever. And so I'd like that. And they said, yeah, actually, that's a good idea. There's always creative solutions. It's not always time off. I know all those examples were time off of work, but there's always creative solutions is the point. So, well, to answer the other side, the two-part, right? I'm also grateful kind of for the next steps of my business right now. So I'm actually hosting a women's transformative retreat in the Red Rocks of Sedona, Arizona. It's October 5th through 8th, and it is a beautiful area. I cannot wait to visit it. But I don't know if you guys have heard of like the energy vortexes.
Yes.
In this area, some of the strongest in the world are here. And so in the retreat, we actually tap into these energy vortexes by doing things like sunrise and sunset hikes. We're doing yoga. We are really just enjoying nature. We're also, spending time doing a full moon ceremony on the last night, where we kind of release, what no longer serves us from the retreat, and also bring in what we plan to change coming out of the retreat. And I'm also showcasing my new content, which is Overwhelmed to Overjoyed, in the lessons and reflections in the retreat. So just really grateful to add this new branch to the business and make it available to the public, because the retreats I've done in the past have been private. So we do have a few spots left. So if you are interested, I know that you guys are going to put the retreat website in the show notes. Please let me know as soon as possible, because we do have a few spots left, and we'd be happy to take on a few other women.
And I wish I could come. I'm so
Yeah.
bummed for a convention at the exact same time. So
Next year.
next year, hopefully this becomes an annual thing, and next year I'll do a trip and join your retreat. Tina, maybe we can do a Success Your Own
Yeah.
Way.
Oh, love it.
Yes, we
Field
can
trip.
film live on site. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's awesome. That's so cool. I'm so glad you're doing that. There's so many women out there, especially who really need this ability to let things go and learn how to advocate for themselves and ask those things that they've been nagging in the back of their heads and find the courage to actually do it. And I often find too that you're surprised when people do say yes, but you won't know if you don't ask. And so this retreat sounds like an awesome way to kind of crystallize that. One more thing that I'm curious about, just with the career path that you've had, Jess, what role have mentors played in your life and in your career? What kinds of characteristics do they bring, and what do you look for in a mentor? Or what tips do you have for folks when they're thinking about getting or needing a mentor?
No, I think that's a great question. For the part-time pitching, I actually utilized my women in supply chain group leader, and I asked her to role play with me, and she gave me some great tips on how to propose to my manager the part-time solution, for example. I also reached out to other women in my network who had done the sabbatical to ask how their sabbaticals worked and what they would suggest that they liked and didn't like about their arrangement, etc. So you just tap in to coworkers and those who've done it before you, but also natural mentors. Like I already had the Women in Supply Chain group and a mentor there. And then I'll say, as far as other pieces, the coaching and getting certified, obviously I tapped into a coaching certification group, but there was a mentor attached, which you would literally do coaching on camera and she would give you coaching on your coaching. So,
Yes.
there's all kinds of options. Like that was more education based. And then I've also had a life coach, so there's just been, it depends on what stage you're in, right? I've also had a life coach who supported me in kind of understanding who I was and what brought me joy and, what was fulfilling, is that I could utilize that to kind of move into the next steps of my own personal reflection. So there's been lots of different paths I've taken for the mentorship or support aspect.
I love that. I think sometimes too, for women, they're more hesitant to ask, not only advocate for themselves, but ask for help. We're the superheroes of the world and we think we've got it. And you mentioned a couple of times in your life when you really did need to take a pause and really reflect and ask for some help. And it sounds like that has really infiltrated your whole career and how you moved from place to place. I think that's really powerful.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
Before we close, one of the things we like about this podcast, and just similar to how you wrote the book that you wanted to read, that's part of this podcast. Tina and I wanted to put the podcast that we wanted to listen to. So with that, we'd like to give our listeners some concrete tips and advice for those looking to either pause for a minute and ask themselves what the success look like, or just an early, mid, or later career. Tips and advice for them to achieve their definition of success.
First and foremost, define it. Everyone kind of runs. What I have noticed in coaching and from friends and coworkers is people will go and make decisions or changes or none at all without having any reflection. And also, by the way, making no changes is a choice.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Continuing to live the life you live and being unhappy in it is also a choice. But also trying to make new paths and everything without defining what success is to you will most likely result in disappointment, right? And so the first thing you need to do is define what success means to you. And I'll give you a practical way to do that. In my Soul Salary book, there is an exercise that is what are you most proud of to date? And this is not meant to be the obvious ones. It's not meant to be the weddings or the births or the big promotion, right? Like those are great, but what are you personally most proud of in your life? And again, I'm not talking about what society would say is the most impressive or what your parents would say is the best thing you've done. What are you personally most proud of? That gives such a beautiful insight into what you feel like a successful life is. Personally, right? And honestly, what you feel most proud of might perfectly align with society thinks, right? And that's totally fine. We're not dissing, the societal norm and branding, right? If that is aligned with you, excellent, right? It's just not with most. So that's the advice I get.
Yeah, and reading the book, there are really thoughtful exercises here that I know helped me. So Jess was actually one of my mentors as I was considering making the change, because Jess, you made the move before me. One of my first calls were to Jess to understand what it looks like leaving corporate and doing these things and working to yourself. So as soon as this book came out, I loved it, and I'm throwing just one of the most inspiring things for me was when you're talking about promotions. Really resonated with me that some of the changes are promotions. Can you explain the difference between kind of like the raise versus promotion?
Yes. So the soul salary concept is something we all understand, which is a salary, right? You have paychecks, you have bills. So the paychecks are in this book, what brings you joy and fulfillment. A bill is what I call joy killers and soul suckers, which are unaligned expectations and limiting beliefs. Those are the bills, right? So on the paycheck side, you can give yourself raises and promotions. So raises are that low-hanging fruit of little things you can do to increase your joy and fulfillment in your life, where the promotions are those big steps that scare the crud out of you, that are, kind of a really big step in the joy and fulfillment realm. And then same on the build side, you have budgeting and budget cuts. So budgeting are those kind of lower hanging fruit that you can cut out of your life, and then that you can reduce out of your life. And then the budget cuts are, what are you eliminating from your life that's causing you soul sucking and joy killing tendencies, right? And the goal is to follow the book until you become a high earner in soul salary is what I call it. So
yeah, I started to almost put a little bit of my goals is this a raise? Is this a promotion? I'm working towards I'm working towards promoting myself. So
well, and honestly, I tell my clients, do not define, you don't have to define what your raise and promotion is, especially not compared to anyone else, because a raise to you could just be leaving General Mills, and that's a huge thing for someone else, but it was like an easy decision for you. Who knows? I don't know. I know that it wasn't for either of us, but you get my point. So like a raise for someone else could be a totally different thing for some. Anyway, the point is that you're increasing your soul salary. That's what matters. If you want, you can call it whatever you'd like, but the point is you're doing it. You're doing the work.
Such a relatable metaphor. Awesome. That's such a really good way. I think that most people can think about their joy and maybe haven't before. Everybody has to manage a budget. It's like money is, important for living. And we've had that conversation out here as well.
You got some limited resources.
And to see it.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
And to see the relatability between joy and, and the monetary side of your life and connecting those dots, I think is going to be really helpful for our listeners. Really cool.
Thank you. And what I say is you kind of have two resources that are pretty finite, which is time and energy, right? And so how do you align energy with what feels joyous and fulfilling? And that's what makes soul salary, is aligning your time and energy with that.
Yeah.
Amazing. Yeah. So cool. Well, I know I learned a ton from you today, Jess. Thank you so much for being with us today on this episode of Success Your Own Way. We are at the point where we're going to be wrapping up, and I do want to say a huge thank you to Jess, and thank you to Ifat as well for co-hosting today's episode today. We'll invite all of our listeners to like and subscribe our channel. We are on YouTube, Success Your Own Way, and let us know what else you want to hear about. And again, thank you to Jess and Ifat for today's episode.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jess. And we will have links in the episode description to be able to find Jess, order the book, and most importantly, get on that retreat. So thank you, Jess. Thank you, Tina. And until the next episode. Bye.
Thank you for joining us on Success Your Own Way. We hope you found this episode inspiring and took away actionable insights. Please tune in for our next episode, and if you know someone who is rethinking what success looks like in their life, please share this episode with them.